On this CPM, there are different settings on here, but there really are 5 numbers on this machine for the 5 main settings, okay? So if we come on over here, setting number 1 is right here on each side of the CPM, okay? In the case of the off armrest, we're always going to be at 90. On the side that we're fitting the patient to, you can see that you have from way back here from 0 degrees all the way up to 120 degrees at the front. This setting is generally going to be in the 30 to 50 degree range. And what I do is I typically start at 40 and then see if I need to swing the arm out more in front. I would go this way. If I needed to swing the arm further to the side, I would go this way. But I am going to start at 40 generally, and almost all my setups are always going to be either 40 degrees or 30 degrees. Now, the other thing that this adjustment could be used for, if we have a very wide patient, we can scoot back to give the wide patient a little bit more room. If we have a very thin patient, we can scoot forward to try to get in closer to the patient. But again, generally we are going to be at about 40 degrees on this number 1 setting. Okay. Number 2 is right where we put the motor into the unit, and number 2 setting is always going to be relative to the how tall the patient is. We are going to line this motor up with the shoulder joint. We'll use the knob here to unloosen, and we can go smaller or taller and then lock into place, and that would tell you what number they're at, but this is always going to be relative to the height of the patient. Our number 3 setting is the length from the hips, from the shoulder socket, which we're going to line up the pivot point of the A motor with that shoulder socket, again by adjusting the number 2 setting up or down. The number 3 setting is going to be our length from the shoulder socket to the elbow. So for patients with very short arms, we're going to be in tight. For patients with longer arms, we're going to be longer. And what we want to do here is be able to have the patient's arm sitting in the orthosis without the B motor up against the elbow and without pulling them away from the unit itself. Okay. The number 4 setting on here is right here, and this is always this is the setting we just talked about, is always going to be at 90 unless we need to adjust it for the patient's comfort, but it's either going to be left or right, and it's almost always going to be 90. So that's very rarely going to change. Finally, our number 5 setting is right here, and it is the length from the elbow to the hand. The patient will grab the handpiece, and this is going to be the length from their elbow to their hand, and that just locks and unlocks right there. Okay, so we have our CPM put together. You can very easily leave the machine put together before you get into the patient's home and fold up the arms so that it can be wheeled in and out of the patient's house. My recommendation is when you go to do your setup, the first thing you do is ask the patient where they want to use the CPM and where they're going to leave it. Once it's folded out, it's not easily moved, especially through doorways. So the patient wants to pick a spot where that's where they're going to use the unit. Most people want to be able to see the TV while they're doing this, so they usually want to be in the family room or in their bedroom. But once you get it set up for them, it's not advisable for them to move the unit very much. Okay? I would also go ahead and run the unit one time. I always do this. I always run it one time with my arm in it before I ever even fit the patient. Okay, so I'm pretty much already used to where my settings are. So I'm going to set this machine up to fit me. Okay. Okay, and again, typically, I would sit in this before I got my patient and then I'd let them watch me. It does two things. It allows me to test the unit to make sure that it's doing what I want it to do, set up the way it's going to be, and it also allows me to show the patient what they're going to be doing, what they're going to be working towards. As I'm doing this, I'm also explaining to the patient that they need to sit square into the chair, they need to be all the way back into the chair, and they need to sit with good posture and keep their shoulders back, okay? I also explain to them they need to relax, not help the machine, not fight against it, let the machine lift them up and down. And you'll see here that at the very top of the range of motion, my hand is going to come back behind my head and just clear the back of my head.